everyone, welcome back to the Sweet Star Candle YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be showing you how to get candles without bubbles every single time. So your first step is getting your vessel. Right here I've got a 22 ounce Libby jar, and this is my typical size for all of my candle products. So this is the one I'm going to be using, but you can use any candle safe jar. So I've already cleaned this candle out. I ran it under some water and then allowed it to air dry, but you can use isopropyl alcohol as well and just wipe it out. So essentially what we're going to be making before we even get started is a little kind of jacket for our jar to fit right in. So I'm going to show you guys how to make this. So essentially the aluminum foil is going to help keep heat inside the candle, and that's going to allow the candle to cool down a lot slower, which will prevent the air bubbles that pop up. So right here I've just got some aluminum foil, and I'm just going to tear off about 4 inches of this. And then I'm going to start wrapping it around my candle. And as you can see, I just wrapped it around it, and it's the perfect size for the candle. And then once your candle is made, you can just take this out, and then this can be reused over and over. So before I put my jar into my aluminum foil, I'm going to get the wick placed in there, since the bottom of the aluminum foil is most likely going to have ridges and stuff, so that way it's even and perfectly in the center. So I've got my wooden wick here. Today I'm going to be making my Cosmic Candy candle. This as an example for you guys. So my wooden wick tabs, and I'll have all the links to everything I use in this video, all linked down below, and then wooden wick stickers. And then the fun part is my wooden wick placement tool. This is from Norton Candle Supply, and you can basically special order these to fit any kind of jar that you want. So this one perfectly fits the 22 ounce Libby jar, as you can see. So I'm going to flip this over, add my wooden wick to the bottom, tear off the sticker, kind of let it fall a little bit so that way it's not going to stick once I flip it over. I'm going to put it in my jar and then just let it fall, and as you can see, perfectly in the center. Then I kind of use the bottom of my wooden wick placer just to push on the tab, just to make sure it's really in there. So now that the wooden wick is placed, I can go ahead and put it right back into my aluminum foil, and we are ready to make the candle. So for this candle I need 12.5 ounces of wax, and I've already heated it up in my really big wax warmer, and it's just going to flow right into my Pyrex glass. So as you can see, when the wax is coming down, I opened up the valve just enough to where it's letting wax through, but it's not bubbling up. I'll show you guys what it looks like when it bubbles up a little bit. It makes a lot of noise, and it causes bubbles to go into the wax. So this is just kind of one of the first steps of prevention of bubbles in your final candle. This step is probably doesn't do much, but I like to do it if I can, just because it causes less of a mess anyway. So I'm at 9.4 ounces right now, and just need to get to 12.5. And the amount of wax you need will be dependent on whatever vessel you're using. So just kind of know beforehand how much wax your candle needs for the perfect amount. Now that I've got my wax in my pitcher, I'm going to add it to my electric hot plate. And the reason I'm doing this is so that the wax will heat up enough to the temperature that I want. So I'm just going to turn this on. And turn it to the setting 4 or 500. While that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and add in my candle dye and mica powder. So I'm going to add 1/64 teaspoon of Diamond Dust mica powder from Nature's Garden. And this is going to allow the candle to sparkle while it melts. Now if you're using a cotton wick, mica powder might not be the best idea because wicks can get clogged, but since I'm using a wooden wick, I can basically add whatever. And then I'm also going to be adding 1 drop of magenta liquid candle dye. You really don't need a lot of candle dye for candles, unless you're making like a specific color. So I'm just going to add 1 drop of that. So now that those are added, I'm just going to mix it up just a little bit just to get the candle dye incorporated. I'm going to keep letting it heat up until it reaches about 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And once again, this is just going to be dependent on what wax you're using and what temperature is recommended to add fragrance oil and to pour into your vessel. So it's at 156 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So I'm just going to move on to getting my vessel and my fragrance oil ready. So I've got my glass fragrance oil thing ready, and I'm just going to zero out my scale again. For this candle, I'm going to need 1.2 ounces of fragrance oil. That's a little less than 10%, but basically 10% fragrance oil. So while I'm still waiting on my wax to heat up, I'm going to work on my jar. I'm actually going to take my wooden wick out, and I'm going to heat up my jar with my heat gun. So I'm just going to take my heat gun and kind of start at the bottom and make my way around until I get to the top of the jar. So basically what this is doing is causing the jar to kind of heat up to the same level of our wax. Because if we were to pour in our wax without heating up our vessel, let me just show you an example. So for this candle, for example, I don't think I heated up the jar with the heat gun or wrapped it in aluminum foil. So the wax kind of separates from the jar, and this alleviates that. So if you don't take away anything from this video, the most important step is definitely the heat gun into the jar before you pour your wax. So my wax is about 215 degrees Fahrenheit, and so now I can pour in my fragrance oil. So you can just pour in whenever your wax manufacturer's recommendation. But this wax is perfect around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, adding in the fragrance oil. So I'm just going to get that all mixed in until the wax is no longer cloudy. And then I'm going to let it cool down to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And also heat gun my jar one more time before I pour in my wax. So I'm going to add my wooden wick right back in. And then pour my wax. I'm also going to use my spoon that I was mixing with to kind of break the fall of the wax. And this is also going to prevent air bubbles. So I just have my spoon at the bottom of my jar. And I'm just going to start pouring over on my spoon and breaking the fall of the wax. And as the wax goes up, I'm just going to allow the spoon to follow the top of the wax as I go up. So now I've got my wax poured in there. I'm just going to adjust the wick to make sure that it's in the middle before my wax starts to solidify. And I'm just going to leave this overnight, and I will be back tomorrow to show you guys how the candle turned out. So I let my candles sit overnight, and now it's time to get them out of the aluminum foil. And I'm going to show you guys the next step. So now that they're out, I'm actually going to melt the tops of these with a heat gun. So what the heat gun is going to do is any candle wax that's on the sides is going to go down into the candle, and then it's going to flatten out the top. Since sometimes during solidifying in the middle it'll sometimes cave in, so I'm just going to melt the tops of these so that way when they solidify one more time it'll be a smooth top. So I melted the tops of these candles. I'm going to let them solidify and then I will be right back. So now that they are all solidified, I'm just going to get my wicks trimmed down. But just to show you guys how much that cleans off the side. And as you can see, no air pockets or bubbles anywhere on the sides. If you guys enjoyed today's video and found it helpful, if you did, please give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe. I have links to all of the materials I use down below. And if you want to check out my personal candles, I have a link at the top of the description. Thank you again everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.